Hi, I'm Abby.
And I'm Ronnie.
And this is Dragons in the Details, where we break apart your favorite fantasy series over the course of an undetermined number of episodes. Ronnie, how are you today?
How are you today? I was going to ask you.
I'm sorry, you're right. I fucked it up. It felt like it just flowed naturally. Guys, we're trying a new intro strategy where we say our names first. We don't think we're crushing it. Let us know what you prefer.
Yeah, let us know. Actually, this is a good comment poll. Let us know whether you're just thrown off when you enter our podcast and we are immediately talking about something unrelated to fantasy.
Yeah, because what happens is we start having a good conversation because we're friends, right? And we're just catching up. And then one of us is like, fuck, we should start recording. This is a good conversation. So then we just pick up the thread of that conversation. But I understand that might be disorienting to some people. So we're trying to do a real intro. And we are not nailing it, I don't think.
We'll get there. Anyways, Abby, how are you?
I'm great. I have like the worst poison ivy I've ever had in my life right now.
Really?
I do.
Is it
I
from
don't
your
know where
house?
I got it from. I don't think so. I think I got it at my parents' house because I had it a little bit when we got up here. But like, it is literally.
That's what I meant. Is it from the house in... I'm not going to like dox you right now, but the house that we were at together?
No. I think it's from New York. I think it's from my parents' house in New York.
Oh, from New York. Okay.
New York is a big enough state where people won't know where we're talking. But I really am not sure if I should share this because I want to be very clear that I am not a doctor. This is certainly not good medical advice. And I think it's actually, if anything, makes poison ivy worse, not better. But it feels so fucking good. I have to tell you all, if you have poison ivy, in my opinion, you might not feel the same way. But for me, for my body, this feels so good. Turn your shower as hot as you can get it without burning yourself. And just like, if you have a detachable shower head, like just like run it over the poison ivy. I don't know what it is. It is like borderline orgasmic. It is like the best fucking feeling in the world. I see
Really?
the disgust you're looking at me with, but it is
well,
like.
I think of it as like when I put hot water on like a rash or like something itchy on my body, I hate it.
Oh my God, I don't know. And it might, my nerves, my nerve endings might be fucked up or something. And I know it is not good for the rash. I know that it is not what you're supposed to do. It says to be like, it's like use like cold compresses and like be gentle with it. And I'm in the shower just like scalding the shit out of this thing. But I don't know what it is. It feels so fucking good. I can't describe it. So I've just been, not only do I have poison ivy on both my legs, I have been scalding the shit out of it in the shower. So like, I don't know, this might take months to heal.
Interesting.
So don't do that is what I'm just telling everyone. But anyway, how are you?
I told you I found a wedding dress yesterday, which
you did.
Thank God. That is off my list. So I'm learning that, like, against all things I expected about myself, I am turning out to be a pretty type B bride in that I've only gone dress shopping alone. And then, like, yesterday...
I was going to say, like, did your mom go with you? Like, surely not. No.
I just don't want the stress of, like, having people, like, come into town to do it. And then there's, like, pressure to, like, choose it when people... are there, and then like you get opinions that aren't your own. And so I went shopping alone the first time. I have no issue with like choosing the dress by myself with no other opinions, but you'll laugh at this. Yesterday on the way back from Pilates, I asked our friend Jenna, I was like, do you want to like come to this with me at like 2:00 or whatever it was? And she was like, what, you're just dropping this like now? Like, okay. And I did it actually choose the dress. And she was like, oh my God, I didn't think you were actually going to choose it. I was like, I didn't think I was either, but I don't know, whatever. I was actually going to sleep on it. I told the woman, I was like, I'm going to sleep on it and then call you tomorrow. And then we were sitting there and I was like, fuck it, I want to be done. Order it.
Pull and drag. Yeah.
So
I think that's great.
It's done.
It just gets so messy when you ask other people. And it's like at the end of the day, it's your choice.
You could spiral forever. Like, even within your own mind, like, there's always going to be, like, 1 million other options. So if you see something you like, just get whatever. It. Just get it. If it's within your budget, obviously. Like, don't... Advice to other people, don't be stupid. But
if you like it, buy it if it's in your budget.
If it's in your budget. Story. Be financially prudent.
Be smart with money. Anyway, all right. As previously mentioned, this is Dragons in the Details. It is not a financial self-help podcast. It is a deep dive fantasy podcast. So I hope you appreciated that tangent. And this is our second season. You guys probably know that by now. This is like, we're well into our second season here. We are focused this season on A Court of Thorns and Roses, the entire series, not just the first book. I know sometimes that gets confusing. by also known as ACOTAR by Sarah J. Maas. Disclaimer, these episodes will contain spoilers for the entire ACOTAR series. So that is A Court of Thorns and Roses through A Court of Silver Flames. Every book in between. We will announce any other Maasverse spoilers before we do them. I think if you guys are listening to this episode, you know by now. First part of our episode dedicated to ACOTAR only. The second part of our episode is when we get into our Maasverse theories, and we do a spoiler warning before the Maasverse theories. I am just going to plug, once again, the ACOTAR section of these episodes are good. They might even be great. Some of you might even think they're great. We're happy for that. I highly encourage you to read the Maasverse. If you are listening to this podcast, you clearly care about this series. The Maasverse will do nothing but enhance your enjoyment of this series. We are not getting paid by Sarah J. Maas. We are not getting paid by anyone. This is not a plug. I am just telling you, I think it will enhance your enjoyment of the series.
That's Crescent City and Throne of Glass.
That is Crescent City and Throne of Glass. Thank you, Ronnie. Disclaimer, this podcast is rated R. Do not listen with your children. I don't think any of you are listening to it with your children, but we do curse like sailors. Each week, we dive into a specific topic in depth. This week, we are digging into our favorite human family on Prythian, the Archerons. So last week was our Reese family deep dive, which we found quite frustrating because there are absolutely no names to hang on to in that family.
No.
This family, we at least have a last name. We do not have a first name for Mama and Papa Archeron, but we at least have a last name. So that is something. We are coming with receipts. We have quotes to back up any theory, so you can follow along if you're skeptical. We rely heavily on quotes. Ron, you want to do announcements?
I don't know if we have any announcements, really.
Yeah.
Just, you already know how the season's structured. Only announcement is if you guys were with us in Empyrean coverage and now you're here in ACOTAR coverage, you'll notice we have deep dive music. That deep dive music is by a real artist named Schwoodley. If you like our little deep dive music jingle, check him out. He's great.
He's great. We like him as a person, too.
I was going to say, I like him as a human being as well as a musician. And yeah, that's it for announcements, I think.
Awesome. All right. Corrections, omissions, social media shout outs. Do you have any?
I have a shout out just because I thought it was a fun little thing to think about and relevant to this episode. So we posted a clip about the bone carver saying that a Fey warrior's blood runs in some human line somewhere. And a commenter by the name of R.G. Wood commented on that clip saying that they believe Feyre's grandmother, who we'll talk about it, but was kind of a terrible woman, seemingly, was Fey. And that's why Feyre's mother was so anxious about keeping appearances. I think that's an interesting theory, and I just wanted to shout it out. You didn't have much behind it, but we'll put stuff behind it in this episode. So thanks for the comment.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, okay, we'll get into that. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
Any from your
I thought
side?
you were gonna go in a different direction. No, not really. No, I don't have anything.
Abby, what do you think about the Archerons?
All right, and I don't have anything written for this. This is just kind of off the cuff. They're terrible. They're like terrible people, as far as I could tell. Like, and I'm specifically talking about, again, Mama and Papa Archeron, not the daughters, but like Mama Archeron is described so unsympathetically. Like, there's so little to like grab onto when you're trying to justify her character and like the choices she made.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like when you compare her to other series that we've covered and other like similarly tricky maternal figures, there was at least something at the end of the day where you're like, I know that mother loved her child. Maybe she made bad choices. Like, I know that mother loved her child. With Mama Archeron, we're given like so little to actually grab onto that makes you think that I'm like, and I know in book one, it really feels like, oh, this is going to come back. This is going to be important. But now we're 5 books in and it's like, is it going to come back? Is this all going to wrap up? Maybe. And then Papa Archeron too, I had never really like picked up on this on the first read, but there's this like undercurrent of greed with him. Like Nesta says he was like more devastated when they lost their wealth than when their mother died. Like he could have sent ships to save her, but he didn't. Like everyone told him trying to go to Barat to get more fortune was a bad idea, but he didn't listen. Like there's this real undercurrent of greed that I didn't pick up on in the first read, but I was like, these are really not good parents, not people I would want to be raised by personally. Even though obviously Papa Archeron has kind of a redemption arc, there's still just like, I don't know, a lot of like badness and unanswered questions, I guess.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that no one cared about them afterwards. Like, I think it's telling, right?
No one cared about who? The parents or the sisters?
The whole family after they fell out of fortune. Like, you definitely, I mean, you get a sense that the people around them weren't good people, but you also kind of get a sense that they were probably not very good people either. Nobody went out of their way to help them when they needed it. And yeah, her mother seems terrible. Her father doesn't seem malicious to me. He just seems weak. Like,
Yeah.
even when he came back, it gave the sense of like a man who's been so inactive that he had to make this big grand gesture to make it all okay.
Yeah,
in
I
the
mean,
end.
he says I had failed my daughters once and I wasn't going to fail them again, right? Like that's what
Yeah.
I think Dracon says he said.
Yeah. He definitely is a bigger man in the end. But like the whole undercurrent of everything he did wasn't like, oh, he's a stand-up guy. It was like he has so much guilt over the last decade of life.
Can I
Oh,
already spew a crazy theory? Because you
sure.
just made me think of something.
Yeah.
And we're going off script here, guys. Elaine says, I was rereading the part where Feyre goes back in A Court of Thorns and Roses to her family. And her and Elaine are talking about traveling to the continent to see the flowers. And Feyre says, like, oh, isn't that in the middle of the season, like the debutante season? And Elaine says, oh, this season was really weird. Everyone acted like they didn't remember, like that the past 11 years had never happened, right? Like no one acted like we had fallen into poverty or anything. Like, do you think that either like the entire, like, do you think that somehow either the entire like town was glamored into not remembering, or do you think that something weird was actually going on when they fell into poverty? And maybe we can get into that when we get into this episode, but I hadn't considered that yet.
Well, I mean, we talked in the Tamlin episode and a little bit in the Lucian one as well about the possibility that like Feyre's whole life was orchestrated. I think if that was the case, then yeah, definitely. Right. Like, so say that Tamlin, we're going off script, guys, sorry, but if Tamlin needed to get out of this curse, talked to the Suriel and was like, how do I find the human woman who is going to get me out of this curse? And the Suriel says, these are the things that you must do in order for everything to fall into place so that she could, then Tamlin would have had to have interfered with the ships going to Barat, made sure that that failed, but then also made sure that nobody helped them so that Feyre would still have to hunt.
Well, and what's so weird, what's sticking in my mind is that when they fell into poverty, she describes her father as having like a cloud over his eyes, right? Like cloudy eyes. And then when their fortune comes back, he's clear-eyed again. So like, yeah, was that a spell when he was in poverty that he wasn't helping his children? Like, what was the Papa Archeron that we got at the end of the book, the actual Papa Archeron? Anyway.
And then was everybody else glamored to like literally not even acknowledge their existence?
Yeah,
probably.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I mean, that's pretty wild, but
anyways, yeah, they suck. I will say though that every Archeron that I have disliked by default so far, and there's really only one, but I suspect there's going to be a second one soon. Once we learn their story, like I come around to them. So like not as much as other people, but before the events of Wings and Ruin, I hated Nesta. We learned Nesta's story. I love Nesta now. I'm currently not a huge fan of Elaine. I think once we learn Elaine's story, you're like this. I think she's just like,
she's boring.
She's unhelpful. No, I think it's more than that. She has all of this power and she's like unhelpful. She's like, I'm scared. I'm gonna like go in the kitchen. Come on. Anyways, I'm not the biggest fan of Elaine right now, but I think once we learn her story, like I will be. So I think like while the Archerons are on the whole unlikable, I think there's more to them.
And I hope that's what happens. I really hope all these threads that we get with their mother lead somewhere. I really hope that's where we're going. We just haven't gotten there yet. Cool. All right, Ron, you want to give the Mama and Papa Archeron context?
Sure thing. Feyre's mother was a cold, imperious woman who loved parties, Nesta, and her husband. And that's about it.
In that order.
She prioritized social status above all else. It really cannot be overstated how cold of a person she was. She did not like caring for her children. She was said to have shoved Feyre into a wet nurse's arms so she could go back to partying. But she did care for Nesta, frequently calling Nesta a queen and favoring her for her ambition. She truly believed that Nesta would marry a prince one day. And she trusted Nesta and knew her to be like herself. She said out loud to Nesta that she cared for her above the others. So She's not a very maternal being, and Nesta describes her as a worse version of herself being Nesta. So picture Nesta, but worse, and an adult, and a full adult. And that is Mama Archeron. She was kind of disinterested in Elaine. She thought she was just a pretty face, and Feyre she found to be, quote, sullen and strange, hypothesizing that it was because Feyre was born on the winter solstice. Physically, she has the same gold brown hair as her daughters, blue-gray eyes, and a straight nose. She is again and again said to look a lot like Nesta, who has, when she's described to look a lot like Nesta, it's when Nesta is kind of picking at her long, clean fingernails. She's got this bone structure, and Nesta is said to have been born with a sneer on her face. Yeah. So we can kind of translate that imagery to Mama Archeron. Not a pleasant person. Which makes it super interesting that her demise was typhus. She died of typhus when Feyre was 8 and Nesta was 12. And on her deathbed, she made Feyre vow to take care of her family, which was a bit odd, as they seemingly had no relationship, and Feyre was 8 years old.
And not right, yeah. Not the eldest. Not the
oldest, and not her husband. What? Like, her husband was completely able-bodied at this time. Make this make sense. Anyways, Feyre's father, Papa Archeron, was known as a prince of merchants, so he was an extremely wealthy goods trader from a merchant family that it turned out was actually covering up multiple generations of bad debt. Feyre's father, when he found out about the debts, attempted to eliminate them by sending a bunch of ships of goods sailing straight for Barret, and those ships were specifically to sail a very treacherous course to Barret, like the worst one, and they never reached it. And with that, all of their riches were lost. They fell into poverty, and the creditors who had been kind of circling the Archeron family and this like merchant family for generations then swooped, ransacked their house, and beat Papa Archeron, effectively ruining his leg and just turning him into a full cripple. And he seemingly just kind of gave up on life from there. Feyre sustained them by hunting, and he, Papa Archeron, committed his life to basically sitting by the fire and occasionally working on his wood carvings. When Feyre is taken away by Tamlin, though, Feyre's father, in a seemingly like rare show of emotion, tells her to never come back. Tells Feyre she's too good for them, make a name for herself elsewhere. He really shows in that moment that he knows he's weighing her and her sisters down and kind of wishes that they would leave him, but is unable to do anything about it. That being said, Feyre still really cares for him. She wants and needs to provide for him because of that vow that she made to her mother, who she had no relationship with, ? Even when she learns they're taken care of, she's still drawn back to them to warn them of conflicts. And so the relationship to her father is still one of like caring, even when she knows that they're kind of better off. When she finds out there's going to be conflict, she goes back to them. Then there's this kind of period where Feyre's father is occasionally around. Like when Feyre first returns, he's there, but then he's gone often to Neva, to other places on trade business, and we're not really sure what he's up to in that time. And we later find out that he had discovered the human queens were traitors, hunted down Queen Vassa, bargained her freedom from Koschei. How does he do this? We'll get into it. And shows up to this raging conflict between Hybrid and Prythian on 3 ships, the Elaine, the Feyre, and the Nesta, and quite literally saves the day. Like, kind of wild that after all of that, after sitting on his ass for 11 years with a crippled leg, he saves the day. Unfortunately, the King of Hybrid then snaps his neck right in front of Nesta and Elaine and Feyre, who is traveling on the Cauldron's weird plane of existence.
With the Cauldron.
And he dies. We are told that Lucien has quite the story to tell Feyre about how he all accomplished this, which we then never hear.
It is just summed up in like 2 sentences. It is like, and then Lucien told me the story.
Yeah.
What is the story?
What was the story? Yeah. One additional note here is that while there is no kin on Papa Archeron's side, like no family, Mama Archeron has a cousin named Erston who lives on the continent. This could be an oopsie or like something that will be important later, but Feyre and ACOTAR says that a cousin died of malaria en route to Barret. But Nesta says in A Court of Silver Flames that she wrote to her mother's cousin begging for help once they fell into poverty, and she never responded. Falling into poverty obviously happened after the whole Barret situation. So there's
there
a cousin.
Could be more than one cousin.
Of mothers. Yeah, there could be more than one cousin.
Yeah.
But there's a cousin named Erston who lives on the continent.
There's a cousin out there, for sure.
Anything I missed?
The only thing is that Mama Archeron neglected her daughter's education, which really
True.
wrinkles me, and that is why Feyre cannot read, because her mother just kind of didn't care. But she was very interested in any skills that would get her daughter's husbands, potentially. So with Nesta, it was the dancing, and with Feyre, it was the painting.
Yep. And with Elaine, it was just her looks, the poor girl.
Elaine, it was just being a pretty girl. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Abby. Did Mama or Papa Archeron have a connection to fairies and or magic?
Okay, so this is one of those episodes. Last episode, we gave you some answers. I think this episode is going to be more of a questions than an answers episode, but I think there's fun things to think about here. Once again, we are starting with our man, Tamlin. So Tamlin and Feyre have a really interesting exchange when she gets to the Spring Court. And basically, I believe Feyre is talking about, she's like, I thought you couldn't lie. I thought iron would hurt you, etc., etc. And Feyre says, didn't, Tamlin interrupted, his deep voice surprisingly gentle, didn't your mother tell you anything about us? Not your parents. Didn't your mother tell you anything about us? And his voice literally changes, right? She says his deep voice surprisingly gentle in that moment.
Yep.
So why does he suddenly have a gentle voice? Why did he specifically ask about her mother? There's another moment where Tamlin asks about her mother. So he says, after a rather stilted pause, Tamlin asked, how did she die? When I lifted my brows, he added a bit more softly, I didn't see signs of an older woman in your house. Predator or not, I didn't need his pity, but I said, typhus, when I was 8. I rose from my seat to leave. We've talked about this potentially being a Daemati thing, right? Maybe he read Feyre. Okay, first of all, maybe he really did notice in like the minute, maybe 5 minutes he was in the house that there was no woman there. And so he obviously assumed that she was dead, because God forbid a woman be outside the house. I'm just kidding. I don't think Tamlin's that misogynistic. So option 1, he's telling the truth here. Option 2, he might be a Daemati and he might have read her thoughts. If you don't know what we're talking about, go to our Tamlin episode. There's a lot of instances where Tamlin seems to know more about Feyre's mortal life than he should have. I want to talk about option 3 that we talked about in that episode and that we just referenced, which is that Tamlin was actually maybe manipulating Feyre's life. Alice tells us that Tamlin could feel when his sentries died, right? So when he sent his sentries out disguised as wolves into the mortal lands, he could feel them when they died. He didn't necessarily know how they died, but he felt when they died. So Tamlin's bond with them as their lord and master told him they'd been killed by others, humans, hunters, older women, perhaps. So it seems like he knows that they do die, but not when they die, right? It is straight up possible that she just is Fae, right? Like she could just be Fae and be one of Tamlin's quote unquote sentries. And he disguised her to be human to go have this family and help him solve this curse. And as we've talked about at great length at this point, when you are human, when you are a woman in the body of whatever body you seem to be choosing in this universe, that is the type of child that you have, right? So like Feyre had a child with wings because she had wings when the child was conceived, right? So if Mama Archeron was Fae but was disguised as a human woman, was like shifted into a human woman, then presumably she would have human children, which is why the Archeron sisters appear to be human. And her being a sentry could be a way that Tamlin knows that she died. There's another quote, Feyre, Tamlin said, and I half turned, a muscle feathered in his cheek. Lucian glanced between us, that metal eye roving, but kept silent. This is right after she talked about her mother dying. Then Tamlin shook his head, the movement more animal than anything, and murmured, I'm sorry for your loss, right? It almost seems like he's about to say something to her at that point, like something potentially about her mother.
Yeah. Well, and it's personal. It's like he is
seems
sorry.
like he knows her, right?
It seems like he knows her. Yeah.
Yeah. So she could be Fae. On the other hand, would she have died of typhus if she were Fae? Like, I don't know. I don't really think so. But if she was truly shifted and had like a human body and a human immune system, like maybe.
Yeah.
But we don't really get any clues about her personality that she would like be Fae, you know. But yeah, I'll stop there. What do you think?
I mean, I think it's super interesting. I think it's interesting to think about Tamlin having shifted her, because it seems like he knew her in the way that he talks about her death. And the fact that he like bothers to explain why he knew that she was dead. Like that's like a, oh shit, maybe I just said something that she's going to deduce means something else. Like better say I didn't see any signs of an old woman in your home, which like doesn't make any sense, because the signs of an elder woman in your home is like the same as just having women, and there are 3 of those, so like don't get that.
What is a sign of an elder woman? Or
Yeah.
older woman?
Yeah. And
Or older woman.
Yeah. And I think the Fae bloodline piece, if it exists, my vote is that it's with Mama Archeron because we've not seen her, right? I think the whole typhus death is strange. And the thing that actually makes me think the most that she's Fae specifically, other than the bone carver line, which, like, if you're new here, then you need to watch the other episodes because we've talked about the bone carver line like no less than 10 times. But
I will
Fae
still bring it
warrior,
up in this episode.
yeah, we'll bring it up. But when Feyre dies, she's brought back by 7 kernels of power from each High Lord. And she comes back as Fae, right? She comes back as Fae and changed and has all of this power from these 7 High Lords. When Rhys dies, Rhys comes back as the exact same person.
And he doesn't take any of their power.
And he doesn't inherit any of their power. And I'm not saying that that means necessarily that Feyre was Fae the entire time, but I do think it means that there's something fundamentally different about Feyre's biology versus Rhys's biology, which we could easily explain by discussing what Rhys is. But it's interesting, right? Like, why did these women get dipped in the cauldron, even Nesta and Elaine, and come out Fae? Yeah. So, like, why did Feyre come back Fae? And Nesta and Elaine?
Yeah, why did Feyre?
Heritage?
Yeah, that's a great fucking point. Why did Feyre come back Fae? I don't have an answer.
And then the only other thought that I had is we don't have, like, we've never met in this, like, series in its entirety a witch, but, like, witches are things that exist in the world of, like, magic and fantasy in general. And Nesta is called a witch many times throughout the series. So we don't have any exposure to a witch-like species. Maybe we will. Maybe that's where Mama Archeron finds her roots. And the only reason I think that is because of how many times the word is specifically used to describe Nesta, who looks so like her mother.
So there's an interesting line I did write down here. And this gets back to we were talking a couple weeks ago about the human magic wielders, the humans who could wield magic.
Yeah.
So the quote is, but they don't have magic. Humans don't have magic. This is Feyre talking to Rhys. Rhys said, some do, usually the ones who can claim distant Fae ancestry. But some of those spells don't require magic from the wielder, only the right words or use of ingredients. His words snagged on something in my mind. So what snagged in her mind there? She says specifically something snagged in my mind.
Yeah.
So 2 options there as far as I'm concerned. She knows her mother has Fae blood, or she saw her mother at one point say a spell or like use some magic, right?
Or, I mean, also just like snagging on the mind, but like not having actually had that conscious thought. Because like Feyre's pretty forthcoming about like what she thinks when she thinks it. Like, could that have been a memory that was glamored away from her and she thinks about it because it was brought up?
Well, I want to talk about this because the Archerons' family fortune runs out pretty quickly after their mother dies, right? So like if she was a magic user, if she had these spells, you mentioned the family has this history of debt that was uncovered after she died, right? Like, was she using magic to, make people forget about the debt, like give them all these riches? Like, she seemed to have been a very vain woman. So like, was there a magical interference there that led to the fortune? Because the second time there is, right? We know the second time that is Tamlin's magic giving them that fortune, right?
Yeah.
So was it the first time too?
Yeah. I like the idea of her having something to do with either glamoring the debt or glamoring the wealth into existence. Because it does run out right after she dies, like soon after she dies, and it's called out multiple times that like thank goodness it didn't run out while she was alive. She would have been beside herself.
Right. That said, like,
and who's the most beside themselves?
3 times.
Is Nesta.
Yeah.
The
only other note I had is that if this was some kind of like Fae conspiracy with Tamlin and Mama Archeron, it is possible that Papa Archeron knew. Mm-hmm. I'm not, and all of this theory, I feel like I should say, I'm not 100% convinced of this. I think this is pretty out there, but I think there's enough to talk about. Papa Archeron starts crying when Feyre brings home the wolf pelt, right? So the quote is, his dark eyes flicked to mine. Feyre, he murmured. His mouth became a tight line. Where did you get this? The same place I got the deer, I replied with equal quiet, my words cool and sharp. His gaze traveled over the bow and quiver strapped to my back, the wooden hilted hunting knife at my side. His eyes turned damp. Feyre, ... the risk, ... So like, he's crying when he sees the wolf pelt, right? But like he knows she's been hunting in the woods this whole time. Like, yes, he certainly could be crying because the full realization of what he has kind of forced his daughter to do might be coming to him. That could be part of this. Or is he crying because he recognizes the wolf pelt for one of Tamlin's sentries, and now he knows Tamlin's going to come for her and she's going to be taken away from him. The first thing when Tamlin shows up is that her father tells her, the first thing her father says is to go. He says, go with her, right? So again, did he always know that Tamlin was coming for one of his daughters, maybe? Like, was that always the plan? I don't know. I'm definitely not 100% sold on that, but like, it could be.
I definitely think that Feyre's father is human. I don't have any reason to believe that he's not, but I do think he knows the fairies well. And I think that not only because of like what actually happens in these books where he like tracks down the human queens, finds out they're traitors, finds Vassa, etc., but because we have indications from Feyre, specifically one quote where she says, "My father had once bought and traded a golden lapis lazuli pendant that hailed from the ruins of an arid southeastern kingdom where the Fae had ruled as gods amid swaying date palms and sand-swept palaces." So he was this like big, powerful merchant who was directly interfacing with Fae that did not necessarily come from the other side of the wall. So like he could have known a good amount about Fae culture. Like if Mama Archeron was Fae, then I think he knew that too. Yeah. I definitely think he knew if she was Fae.
There was also that moment where Feyre's like, my father would never come for me, right? And Tamlin specifically says
like,
he
yes,
would.
He would. Yeah.
Yes, he would.
Right.
Like he knew him, right? Not like Tamlin has such a like warm, fuzzy feeling like, oh yeah, I mean, all dads would, right? Because Tamlin's own father sucked, as we know. So it's not like he's going to be like sentimental about fathers' relationships with their children. So it speaks to kind of like him actually knowing Papa Archeron somehow.
Yeah.
Which we might find out when we get Tamlin's story.
I would love that. Honestly, I would.
All right. Yeah, I would too. Anything else for that one? Our first question.
No.
All right, Ronnie, why did Mama Archeron tell Feyre to protect her sisters?
Yeah, so again, this is probably more questions than answers type episode here, but Feyre's mother, on her deathbed, as we mentioned, makes Feyre vow to protect her father and her sisters. And the quote is, "Every time I looked toward a horizon or wondered if I should just walk and never look back, I'd hear that promise I made 11 years ago as she wasted away on her deathbed. Stay together and look after them. I'd agreed, too young to ask why she hadn't begged my elder sisters or my father, but I'd sworn it to her, and then she died, and in our miserable human world, shielded only by the promise made by the High Fae 5 centuries ago, in our world where we'd forgotten the names of our gods, a promise was law. A promise was currency. A promise was your bond." This reads and acts a whole lot like a bargain throughout this series, which is very Fae of her. Feyre's mother specifically asks Feyre to look after their family, and this vow impacts like Feyre's actions basically until she's completely freed from it. And even so, right, Feyre continues, right? Nesta is still under her care. Elaine is still under her care, even though her father is dead. I think Feyre's mother also somehow knew that Nesta would serve the purpose of power. Elaine would serve a purpose of like being a pacifist, effectively. Like that's her role in the family, and that Feyre would be the protector. So how or why would she know that? I went to the theory that Tamlin spoke with the Suriel in the Spring Court and orchestrated Feyre's life. We don't know how old Mama Archeron was, but we know that this curse came into effect 49 years before the events of A Court of Thorns and Roses. And we get that hint that Tamlin may have known or knew of Feyre's mother. So could Mama Archeron have known that Feyre would have to do this? Could she have been manipulated or coerced or just like known Tamlin to raise her daughters in this specific way, knowing that the purpose would be greater? I also had I don't know if I actually believe this, but like the thought of, could Tamlin, like, could this have been a bargain with Tamlin in which Tamlin, like, might have even promised a prince as Nesta's groom one day? And then that could also explain why Nesta was, like, this prized mare to Feyre's mother. The exact same theory that we used in the last question could be a reason that Mama Archeron had made this bargain with Feyre, so that Feyre had to do the things that she did.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because there's a lot of times in ACOTAR, in book 1, where Feyre says, my promise to my mother was fulfilled because her like her family is being taken care of, right? Tamlin gave her family all this money. But the actual wording of this promise is stay together and look after them, right? So when Feyre leaves, as soon as she leaves, she's no longer fulfilling that promise, even though she thinks she is. And yeah, I think it's really interesting that we get the line that she, hold on, I might sneeze.
Bless you.
Thank you. That she thinks about leaving all the time. But the reason she stays, which is, of course, why Tamlin finds her, is because she made this promise to her mother. And of course, even after she thinks her promise to her mother is fulfilled, like, she keeps doing it, right? Because they do stay together. These Archeron sisters, like, have to stay together because, of course, at the end of Mist and Fury, they end up in Prythian as Fae in the Night Court, right? So it's like these words are, like, really binding for these series, that this, like, Feyre has to stay together, stay with her sisters, and look after them. Yeah, I mean, we already talked about this in our intro, but, like, this is, like, a really crazy thing to put on an 8-year-old child when you have a husband, when you have 2 older sisters. Like, why Feyre specifically? And what also is crazy to me, right? Like, we talked about her training Nesta to marry a prince, right? So, like, she's training her in social warfare. That is the exact quote. She's training her in social warfare to marry a prince. Why not make Nesta promise to take care of her sisters, right? If Nesta's going to marry a prince, then Nesta should be the one who's taking care of the sisters, not Feyre, who we are told, we have quotes, right? Like, she's like, Mama Archeron is just not that fond of Feyre. The quote is, it'd hurt and be slow and I'd cry. I might even cry for my mother, who had never cared for me anyway. That's when she's under the mountain. And then my mother claimed I was so withdrawn and strange because I was born on the longest night of the year. She tried one year to have my birthday on another day, but forgot to do it next time. There's probably a more advantageous party she had to plan, right? So, like, she's strange and withdrawn. She forgets her daughter's birthday, or at least she forgets to plan a different birthday party for her daughter. Like, she isn't fond of Feyre, right? So why would she put that on Feyre? Yeah, I mean, it's pointing more and more towards, like, she's not, like, she is in league with Tamlin.
Yeah. Or someone. Yeah.
Or someone.
Yeah.
And, oh, this is so funny. I actually have the same note. I said, random thought. Did she make some kind of bargain with Tamlin to give him Feyre to break the curse? And that's why she's so cold with her and doesn't bother to teach her any social graces, because she knows Feyre is going to the Fae court,
like,
which is terrible.
Yeah.
Which is terrible, but, like, this is not a nice woman.
Yeah. And it also would make sense that if she doesn't view Feyre as a pawn to be used, she's just like, okay, whatever. Like, I'm sure she would get something out of that bargain.
Well, maybe she got all those riches and then she dies, right? And so the bargain, I mean, like, Tamlin gave them their fortune the second time. Maybe Tamlin gave them their fortune the first time.
Yeah.
To trade for Feyre. I mean, there is another moment too. I have this quote written down. There's evidence that, like, the Archerons specifically were trying to turn their daughters against the Fae. I realize they live in a human country where, like, they hate the Fae. But the quote is, Nesta focused on her breathing again. She knew how to swim. Her mother had made sure of it, thanks to a cousin who had drowned in childhood. Murdered by fairies, her mother had claimed. I saw her dragged into the river. So her mother is taking her cousin's drowning and saying that her cousin was murdered by fairies, which is probably not true given everything we know. Like, yeah, there's a Kelpie that drags Nesta into the water, but that lives in the middle and nowhere else.
Yeah.
So it's like, were the Archerons trying to turn their daughters against the Fae to fulfill the terms of Amarantha's curse, or at least was Mama Archeron trying to do that? If you look for it, there's evidence. It also could be nothing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's where that's kind of where I'm at with Feyre's mother in its entirety. Like, does the whole story work if she was just human and Feyre and her sisters were turned by whatever they were turned by? Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. But it's fun to point out.
There might be more here.
There might be more here. Okay. Anything else on that one?
Nah, nothing else. We're good.
Okay.
We're good.
Abby, why did Mama Archeron favor Nesta and try to get her to marry a prince?
So I just straight up like your theory from before that, like, I didn't really have a theory. Like, I was like, look, like, there might be a simple answer here. Like, Nesta is the one who looks the most like her. So she's going to favor her, obviously, and try to get her to marry a prince. I like the idea that you said that, like, what did you say? What was your theory? I liked it.
Maybe the bargain for Feyre going off and like saving all the Fae was that Nesta gets to marry a prince. Like maybe that's what Tamlin promised.
Yeah, or someone. Tamlin or someone.
Yeah, I mean that's like a little wackadoodle, but yeah, Tamlin or someone.
What I like about this, so there's a couple lines here that make it sound like, again, Mama Archeron maybe knew what was going on, or what was going to happen. But, also could be nothing. We shall have to petition your father to go to the continent when the time is right, her mother had often said. There are no men here worthy of either of you. Feyre hadn't even been considered at this point, a sullen, strange child whom her mother ignored. Human royalty rules there still, lords and dukes and princes, but their wealth is tapped out. Many of their estates nearing ruin. 2 beautiful ladies with a king's fortune could go far. So this is the quote we've talked about, her calling Feyre sullen, etc. But she says there are no men here worthy of you, right? Not there are no males here worthy of you, right? So like that's kind of a fun, probably just a wink, wink, nod from Sarah J. Maas, probably doesn't mean anything. But then,
to me that actually sounds more like they're just humans.
Yeah, I mean, like that could be.
Like there are no men here worthy of you, right, but there are men elsewhere worthy of you.
No, I think that's that's probably the correct reading. But what's fun is that like we get the whole Tomas storyline with Nesta, who of course was not worthy of Nesta, and then she marries Cassian. The bone carver calls Cassian the Prince of Bastards, right? And this we get this call out once, and then we get a flashback to him saying the words, the Prince of Bastards. So it feels important. The quote is, "What if I tell you what the rock and darkness and sea beyond whispered to me, Lord of bloodshed? How they shuddered in fear on that island across the sea, how they trembled when she emerged. She took something precious. She ripped it out with her teeth. Cassian's golden brown face had drained of color, his wings in tight. What did you wake that day in Highburn, Prince of Bastards?" So we get that quote in Mist and Fury, and then we get it, or I guess we get it in Wings and Ruin. Sorry, it's got to be in Wings and Ruin. We get it in Wings and Ruin, and then we get it again in Silver Flames. Cassian is remembering that quote. We don't know anything about Cassian's father, right? But like, is he a prince? Like the bone carver has a tendency to say these what we think might end up being very prescient things. He seems to be very intentional with his words. We've talked about the ancient Fey warrior and the Archeron bloodline. So like, is Cassian a prince? Was Mama Archeron in fact preparing Nesta to marry a prince this whole time? I don't know. Yeah. Maybe.
That would be fun.
But I certainly think we're supposed to draw those two together. I think we're supposed to make that connection. We probably don't have enough to make a prediction right now, but I do think there's a point to it all.
Yeah. I like the idea of Cassian's father being important but terrible. That would be fun.
I can't wait for our Cassian episode. Mostly just because I love him so much.
Yeah, we love Cassian. Like he's in my opinion far more fun to talk about than Mama and Papa Archeron.
Oh yeah.
But it's all good.
We're having fun.
We're having fun.
There's another quote. So we know that Mama Archeron like taught Nesta social warfare, quote unquote. There's a quote when Nesta is reading one of the books that Cassian gave her on real warfare. And she says, "It was astonishing how much the art of warfare was like the social manipulation her mother had insisted she learn. Picking battlegrounds, finding allies amongst the enemies of one's enemies. Some of it was wholly new, of course, and such a precise way of thinking that she knew she'd have to read the manuscript many times to fully grasp its lessons." So these skills that her mother taught her are helping her relate to Cassian. And then, of course, she blows him away with the dancing with Eris. So like, yeah, it wasn't like pivotal, it wasn't like fundamental, but it was a big part of their relationship.
I mean, yeah, and I think it was in a way the fulfillment of everything that Mama Archeron had worked on her with, because Eris is as good as a prince, right? And was immediately like, sign me up for that.
Yeah.
Like,
right. She gets a marriage proposal.
Yeah, she literally gets a marriage proposal just from her dancing abilities.
For the second time in her life. That is the second time that happens to Nesta. Yeah.
So, yep.
Yeah.
Whatever she was going for, she was successful. I'll say that. Nesta could have her pick of the litter, but she chose the Prince of Bastards.
The Prince of Bastards, though. Yeah. Did you have anything else on this one?
Most of my answer to this question became the next one. So,
oh, great.
I think we should just go to the next one.
Great. I'm excited. Ronnie, how did Papa Archeron convince Koschei to release Vassa?
Okay. So I'll say before I start here that I'm going a little wackadoodle. Like, small bit.
We need a wackadoodle scale, like a
There's
1 to
reasons.
5.
There's reasons, yeah. All right, so Papa Archeron finds Vassa, who is a human queen bound by a curse in which she is a firebird by day and a woman by night. And she is cursed by a death god named Koschei. Papa Archeron negotiates, which I assume means bargains something beneficial to Koschei here, for Vassa's temporary release to aid the humans. So the way that we learn about this is first from Drakon saying that Drakon and his legions met up with them on the flight here. We saw them crossing the channel and decided to join ranks. It's why we're a little late, though we gave them a bit of a push across. I can't even begin to explain the convoluted story they told me, but they're led by a queen named Vassa, who apparently was found by, and then Feyre assumes Lucian. She says Lucian, and Drakon says, who? The male with the eye. No. He met up with them later on, told them where to go. To come now, actually. So pushy, you Prythian males. Good thing we, at least, were already on our way to see if you needed help. Who found Vassa? Nesta said, with that same flat tone, as if she somehow already knew. He calls himself the Prince of Merchants, Drakon said. Apparently, he discovered the human queens were traitors months ago and has been gathering an independent human army to face Hybern ever since. He managed to find Queen Vassa, and together they rallied to this army. Drakon shrugged. He told me he's got 3 daughters who lived here, and that he failed them for many years, but he would not fail them this time. Then that's later corroborated by Lucian, who says, I've got one hell of a story to tell you, and don't be surprised if Vassa corners you as soon as the ships are sorted and the sun sets. And Feyre says, is she really? And Lucian says, yes, but your father, ever the negotiator, a sad small smile towards that burnt grass, he managed to cut a deal with Vassa's keeper to come here, temporarily but better than nothing. But yes, queen by night, firebird by day. Nasty curse. So the first interesting part of this question is, how does Papa Archeron know where to find Vassa? And we'll get to that. The second question is, like, what did he bargain to Koschei to get Vassa freed? So let's just start with a little bit of backdrop on Koschei, because if you read these books one time, you probably forgot about him like I did the first time I read it. So Koschei is what's known in Prythian as a death god, and was called Koschei the Deathless because there is no death waiting for him. That's why he's called that. He is immortal, like real immortal, and he's the brother to the Bone Carver and Striga, and was captured and bound to a lake by an ancient Fey warrior that the Bone Carver tells us about, whose bloodline runs in some human line. He is said to be a powerful sorcerer with a particular affinity for capturing and binding women with curses. Jurian says he's an old death lord above the wall with a penchant for enslaving young women. And so how did Papa Archeron know where to find Vassa? We're told that Papa Archeron somehow found out the human queens were traitors. So he could have feasibly deduced that the missing Queen Vassa would have been loyal and set out to find her. But remember, we only knew what happened to Vassa because of Elaine. Like, the only reason that we knew Vassa's curse even existed was because Elaine saw her as a firebird, and Papa Archeron found her before Lucian did. So he had a way of finding her. Then we also have this ancient Fey warrior who was responsible for binding Koschei. So here's like kind of my crazy theory that I came to here. So we've already talked about how Mama Archeron could very well be more than met the eye, and that she might have had some of that Fey bloodline or some trace of something else. What if she was a magical being, Fey works, that could have been bound to human form by Koschei himself, especially if Koschei was bound to the lake by her ancestor? And then Papa Archeron would have known who he was, what he's capable of. Like, this is like revenge, right, of Koschei. Like, your ancestor locked me in this lake. I'm going to bind you. He knew Koschei bound women by curse, and Papa Archeron sought him out. That's my thought on, like, how maybe Papa Archeron knew who Koschei was and knew to find him. So then let's see whether the rest of the theory works and talk about what Papa Archeron might have bargained. One simple answer is just his life, because he did die. The more interesting answer is a little bit more complicated. So Nesta is relentlessly compared to Mama Archeron, but there is no resemblance at any point mentioned to Papa Archeron. Nesta has also been described as a queen and a death goddess on multiple occasions in this book, and Koschei is a death god. Striga is also described as a queen, who is Koschei's
the king of Hybern calls her, a queen. Yeah.
Yeah. So could Nesta, specifically Nesta, be born of Koschei or a line from Koschei related to possible encounter with Mama Archeron like years ago? Is that why Papa Archeron knew who he was, knew how to find him? Could Nesta be a queen of death from Koschei? In which case, could Papa Archeron have bargained? This is terrible, but could he have bargained Nesta and said, "You can have Nesta"?
I feel like there's something there. I don't think he bargained Nesta.
Yeah.
Oh, I
don't want to believe he
He
bargained
just
Nesta.
gave me some. No, there's no way he did, because like he came back and he said to Nesta, like, I have loved you from the moment I saw you, right? Like, I don't think he bargained Nesta.
Yeah. But like, what could he have had that Koschei would actually want?
Well, I thought about this, right? Because the death gods or death god adjacent things, they're both offered freedom and they don't take it, right? Bryaxis and the Bone Carver are both like, they're like, we can get you out of here. And they're like, no, we want to stay. I don't know that I'm going anywhere with this. I don't know that Papa Archeron would have the ability to do that.
Yeah. It's like I feel pretty good about the, like, call it 15% possibility that Koschei and Mama Archeron had a run-in at some point. If Mama Archeron is a descendant of the Fae that bound him. Like,
well, the other person that could be is Vassa. Vassa could be the descendant of the Fae that bound him, which is why he is now capturing Vassa. But the queen sold Vassa to her.
Yeah, the queens gave Vassa to him.
And what's really like, oh, this is what tickled my brain. Koschei wants Nesta, right?
Yeah.
In Silver Flames, he is after Nesta through Briallen, but like he is after Nesta.
But maybe the bargain died when Papa Archeron died.
Or did he just become aware of Nesta through Papa Archeron somehow?
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Still think it's interesting that the Bone Carver said she is a queen as my sister once was.
Well, and Lanthus wants Nesta when we meet him too, right? Like everyone wants Nesta for some reason.
Yeah. Right. But Bone Carver compares her to Striga specifically. Yeah. Like says Striga was once a queen.
All right. So the quote is, it's the follow-up to that Prince of Bastards quote, right? So what did you wake that day in Hybern, Prince of Bastards? My blood went cold. What came out was not what went in, a rasping laugh as the carver laid the shard of bone on the ground beside him. How lovely she is, as new as a fawn and yet as ancient as the sea. How she calls to you, a queen as my sister once was, terrible and proud, beautiful as a winter sunrise. So that's about Nesta, right? Well, first of all, the Bone Carver clearly just knows about Nesta, right? So if the Bone Carver knows about Nesta, then I think it's totally like Koschei just knows about Nesta, right? Because he says he like hears it through the
wind
sea and
moans
the wind.
her name.
The wind moans her name, right? So then Koschei would know too, especially if they're all like connected by being made, etc. Like if she like somehow became a death god, and this is not our Nesta episode, but we'll get there. Yeah. I don't think it necessarily has to be that. Are you implying that Koschei is her father, or that Koschei wants her as his bride?
More like whatever Koschei is, Nesta has a part of that.
I mean, I was going to get into this in our Maasverse section, but there is certainly a lot of implications that Nesta was not human before she went.
Yeah.
Before she in the cauldron, right? So where is it? Yeah, so these are all ACOTAR quotes, right? Like truly from book 1 before she goes in the cauldron. So she'd been made differently from something harder and stronger than bone and blood. She was as different from the humans around us as I had become, right? So that's about Nesta. She wore a simple pale lavender muslin gown, her hair half up and billowing behind her in a sheet of gold brown, beautiful, imperious, still as one of the high fae, right? Yeah. So there's that. She's saying she's high fae, but we don't know that.
Like,
and then Tamlin's glamour
don't work.
Like I definitely think there's an implication that Nesta maybe had a different father, or maybe is just something else. Could be the same father, but just with some magic infusions there. Yeah. Okay, cool.
The crazy theory on that one is that Mama Archeron was bound by Koschei. Maybe she was called back when she died, quote died. Maybe that was like the end of her life out there. And maybe that's how Papa Archeron knew to find Koschei. And maybe he bargained Nesta, but I kind of think whatever the bargain was, it's like, because she's still free, whatever it was either went away when he died, or there's no real end necessarily. Like something just is true and needs to remain true in order for her to stay free.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely There's definitely something. There's definitely some connection between Nesta and Koschei.
Yeah. I mean, Koschei's after Nesta for some reason. Probably because she's one of whatever he is. And could that have anything to do with Papa Archeron's bargaining power? Maybe. I don't know. Do you have anything
I like
better for this
No,
question?
I definitely don't have anything better. I don't even really have anything. Just that I agree with you. I think it was probably a bargain because that's what we typically get with death gods. We get a bargain. We do not know the terms of Striga and Rhys's bargain, but we know that they had one because he had a tattoo from her. We don't know what he had to give up. Maybe it was Rhys's death too for Striga because he dies. So yeah, maybe it was as simple as Papa Archeron giving his life, but I like the idea that there's a Nesta connection.
Yeah. And if he gave his life, then it's fulfilled and she would just come back.
Yeah, well, that's what I don't really get is like they keep on like extending the terms of this deal somehow. I don't really know.
Yeah. And I think Lucian at some point describes it as like a little bit of a loophole. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We can move on.
We'll get into it. All right. Maasverse time, everyone. Sorry to all of you who have not read the Maasverse, but this is where we get into our Crescent City and our Throne of Glass spoilers. So if you have not read the Maasverse, love you, bye, and we will talk to you next week. If you have read the Maasverse, feel free to stick around. Or if you don't care about spoilers, feel free to stick around.
Love you, bye.
Love you, bye.
Abby, tell us, was Mama Archeron human?
Okay. So we've already talked about this ancient Fey warrior. A little bit of speculation on who this ancient Fey warrior could have actually been, but I want to be clear that this is like a very, very loose theory. I don't have a lot of evidence. Like it's not this. I just want to point out that this passage exists. So again, to read the quote, "You have met my sister, my twin, the Weaver, as you now call her. I knew her as Striga. She and our older brother Koschei. How they delighted in this world when we fell into it, how those ancient Fae feared and worshipped them. Had I been braver, I might have bided my time, waited for their power to fade, for that long ago Fae warrior to trick Striga into diminishing her power and becoming confined to the middle. Koschei too, confined and bound by his little lake on the continent. All before Prythian, before the land was carved up and any High Lord was crowned." So that also means this was in like the time of Selene. Clever, that Fey warrior. Her bloodline is long gone now, though a trace still runs through some human line. He smiled a bit sadly. No one remembers her name, but I do. She would have been my salvation had I not made my choice long before she walked this earth. So it's not Selene. I want to talk about that because a lot of people, because there are lines in Crescent City where Selene talks about hunting down the bone carver, hunting down other terrible things, and putting them in this prison. So people think this ancient Fey warrior is Selene, but it is not, right? Because he says her bloodline only runs through the humans now. And Selene is 100% Rhys's ancestor. Like, that's not possible.
Yeah. And also, like, at least the way I interpreted this, and I don't know whether this is a fair way to interpret it, this Fey warrior bound Koschei and Striga in other places. And so I don't think it needed to be somebody with access to the prison, which is strictly Thea's bloodline. So I think it's somebody else.
It's somebody else. I do think Selene trapped the bone carver, but this ancient Fey warrior is not Selene. All right, and we talked about Mama Archeron has very distinctive blue and gray eyes. We think this might have been Mama Archeron's descendant or ancestor. Could also be Vassa's ancestor, but let's play the game that it is Mama Archeron's ancestor. When we meet Aelin, Selena Sardothian Aelin, her eyes are just typically described as turquoise, right? But when we first meet her, when we first get the description, she says, at a passing glance, one might think her eyes blue or gray, perhaps even green, depending on the color of her clothing. Up close, though, these warring hues were offset by a brilliant ring of gold around her pupils, right? So initially we get that blue or gray description, which is how the Archeron's eyes are described. I don't think this is Aelin. I want to be clear. Like, we know Aelin's story. Like, she never goes to, she goes to Prythian for a second, but like, as far as we know, she doesn't like end up at Prythian slaying death gods. That doesn't seem to be what's happening here.
Yeah. At least not in our story.
At least not in our story. But I think, this might point to there being a tie between the Archerons and the Ash Drivers. They're Ash Driver eyes, right? So potentially another offshoot of the Ash Driver family. I don't know. That's kind of the most I could come up with. I don't think it's Aelin, but I think it's an interesting connection that Sarah J. Maas was potentially trying to make. All right. Other options here. I think you want to talk about this. Lots of popular theories online that she could be a witch, a Throne of Glass witch. The Archerons sleep in an ironwood bed which we find out was a wedding gift from Papa Archeron to Mama Archeron. The Throne of Glass witches make their brooms from ironwood, right? So that seems like a pretty obvious crossover. She only has daughters. Witches only have daughters, right? Nesta carves into the stairs at the House of Wind with her nails, right? So when she's falling down the stairs in the House of Wind, she gouges her nails into the
stone
wall, and she's able to stop herself that way.
Yeah.
Which is pretty crazy. Obviously, Iron Tooth witches have those iron nails. Her mother, Mama Archeron's mother, Grandmother Archeron, sounds a lot like a kind of version of the Blackbeak matron.
Yep.
So the quote is, this is Nesta talking, her mother's mother had been the same way before she died of a dupe-rooted cough that had turned into a deadly infection. Nesta had been 7 when the stern-faced dame who had insisted on being called Grandmama had beaten her palms raw with a ruler for missteps in her dancing lessons. Worthless, clumsy girl, you're a waste of my time. Maybe this will help you remember to pay attention to my orders. So that just sounds a lot like Manon's grandmother. Just like very cruel, very mean, just like abusing her granddaughter. She could just be a bitch. She could certainly just be a bitch. She doesn't have to be a witch. The other thing that I thought was interesting here, and a tie to potentially the idea of like iron being in their bodies, is that Elaine and Nesta both have mental gates/shields of iron.
Of iron, yeah.
Right. So Elaine's, this is the gates to her mind. Feyre says she doesn't have shields, but the gates to her mind are solid iron covered in vines or flowers, or it would have been. The blossoms were all sealed, sleeping buds tucked into tangled leaves and thorns. So iron gates with Elaine. Nesta's gates have been described as an ancient fortress and are also steel and iron and ashwood, right? And that's before Feyre's a Damati, but like we have this idea of Nesta's mental shields being an iron fortress, basically.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of witch imagery going on with the Archerons. And I know there's a lot about the mother maiden crone also being Feyre is the mother, Elaine is the maiden, and Nesta is the crone. I think that one's a little more, there's not like, that's just kind of like gut feeling. Like there's not exact quotes speaking to that one. And that of course is the 3-faced goddess that the witches in Throne of Glass worship.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to talk about that one? I know you have a lot of thoughts on that one.
I mean, you've recapped most of it. I think the ironwood, the fact that Nesta has so much nails imagery in general, like yes, her stopping herself, but like picking at long, clean nails, also being described as looking exactly like her mother. Grandma Archeron has like some of the same words describing her as the Blackbeak matron. So definitely a lot of consistent imagery there. Nesta also, not even knowing what a witch was, just said, yes, I'm a witch in the Illyrian war camp. They asked, are you a witch? And she says, yes. I think that if their line is a witch line, Sarah J. Maas was definitely giggling to herself during that one. Like, haha, I'm just telling them, and they're probably still going to wonder. So yes, she calls herself a witch multiple times. I don't have great ideas on how it could tie to anybody that we know, really. I think the Fae bloodline running through humans in Prythian, like an ACOTAR only world, I think we've only got 1, maybe 2 interesting human lines. That's the Archerons and that's Jurian's line. And so like that maybe we're then led to Archerons because of all of the Fae-ness that happens with Feyre and crew. But there are other human lines in other books that are interesting, right? You've got Bryce's line. You've got Dorian's line. You've got a bunch of other human lines that could be related to. As far as like how witches could have gotten to them, we don't have tons of, in my opinion, couples to go off of here. Like Elide and what's his name, Lorcan, are very dark colored, so I don't really think that's valid. Like I don't think they could.
Oh, I guess Elide is a witch. I always forget about that.
Witch blood. Yeah, and it would make a lot of sense because it's very faint. Yeah, but they're very dark hair, dark eyes. Doesn't really work out. We don't know the rest of Manon and Dorian's story. And so Manon is very blonde. Dorian is very dark-haired. Manon has gold eyes. Dorian has blue eyes. Like, I don't know. But if they did have a line, it would be insanely powerful. Not just like a shred of blood in somebody, unless like tons and tons of time had passed and it got diluted over time. So I don't know. I like the witch thought. However, none of that ever plays out, right? Like Nesta,
as far as we know,
Deathfire. Feyre has the power of 7 High Lords, and Elaine is probably the closest to like
with the seer thing.
Closest in power to she be witchy.
So this we probably should have talked about this last episode too, because the thing that and maybe I'm wrong because I read Throne of Glass like pretty quickly, and this is part of why I'm rereading it, right? But the thing that I don't get with Throne of Glass is that the witches don't really have any power.
Yeah.
Except for the yielding, right? And they have like, they're good in battle and stuff, right? And some of them take drugs and see things, but like they don't really have any magic. And they are the offspring of the Valg and the Fae, which is, of course, even if we take out the idea that Rhys is an Asteri / Valg and super powerful because of it, right? We have Dorian certainly being the offspring of a Valg, right? And being super duper powerful, implied because of it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I need to double check that, right? But like, so why do some Valg seemingly produce insanely powerful offspring? And then this whole race of witches, who I know they've been cursed, but I thought that curse was more about the land, not really about the witches themselves, right? Like, why do the witches not have any power? Like, I just can't quite figure that one out.
Yeah. The morbid thought that I have there is like, and if you listen to our last episode, you know that I now have stuck in my brain a connection between Valg and Hell. Like, it doesn't matter. Both of those species experiment on living beings, right? And so witches could have been a very specific type of warrior that they were shaping towards that was basically a, like, kamikaze warrior, effectively, right? Like, they are really good in combat. Like, they fight ruthlessly. They literally, like, rip people's throats out with their teeth. They're really good warriors, but, like, they're strongest when they die. So were they just bred for combat?
Yeah.
Like, exploding bombs.
Yeah, so the magic was specifically not bred into them. Do you want to know who that makes me think of? Who we know the Asteri created is the Illyrians. It sounds like the Illyrians. Right. So like same idea where they needed warriors to fight for them. Right. And like the yielding and the Illyrians only have magic in battle. That's what they say. Like their magic is specifically battle.
And the Illyrians were bred with that intent.
By the Asteri. Exactly. Yeah. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe the witches and the Illyrians are each world's version of this Asteri Valg. Maybe the same thing, maybe different.
Yeah.
Warrior.
Yeah.
Warrior breed. Okay. That makes sense. I hope you enjoyed the tangents, guys. I hope you're here to talk about the whole universe.
Bad of a tangent. We're hypothesizing whether Mama Archeron was human.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had a couple more notes on it. Could she have possibly been a seer? Like maybe we talked about that. Nesta does marry the Prince of Bastards, right? And the dancing helps. She encourages Feyre's painting. Rhys first sees Feyre painting and like that helps him fall in love with her. Maybe, but I don't think there's nearly as much evidence here as there was with Rhys's mother that we talked about in the last episode. So like, I don't really think she was a seer. I don't know. Do we want to talk about this? There is an idea, I feel like Nesta and Feyre both have their mother's eyes, right? Mm-hmm. And Elaine doesn't. And Nesta and Feyre adapt to being Fae pretty well. Like, I know Nesta has problems later on, but like out of the gate, like they're pretty comfortable being Fae. And like Elaine doesn't.
Yeah.
So I think
be a warrior.
Well, or was Mama Archeron human, but then Feyre and Nesta's father is not Papa Archeron. He was like something else. But Elaine is Papa Archeron's child. And we know that Papa Archeron like favors Elaine the most. That's kind of an out there theory.
I don't think it's out there with respect to Nesta. I think with Feyre it's harder because she specifically has her father's mouth.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
But I actually like, I don't have evidence, but in my head it's like 50-50 Nesta is Papa Archeron's daughter.
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't, there's nothing about them that's similar. And so.
And she hates him. I mean, she fucking hates him.
She hates him and she feels terrible about it and it causes a lot of issues for her. Yeah. And that's another piece about the witch thing is like, that's another part of Manon's journey that's so hard for her to reconcile is the fact that she is just like bred to be emotionless and struggles really hard when emotions overtake her and like do rear their ugly head. Like she really, really is challenged by that. And so is Nesta.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right. I'm sure we will talk about more more in our Nesta episode.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Okay.
All right, last question. Ron, are there word marks around the Archeron's door? If so, why?
Yes.
Yes.
Let's talk about why. So, in A Court of Thorns and Roses, Feyre's father convinces a passing charlatan to engrave markings around the threshold of their cottage to ward off fairy harm. So, quote, the recounting from Feyre is that my father had once convinced a passing charlatan to trade the engravings against fairy harm in exchange for one of his wood carvings. There was so little that my father was ever able to do for us that I hadn't possessed the heart to tell him the engravings were useless and undoubtedly fake. Mortals didn't possess magic, didn't possess any of the superior strength and speed of the fairies or the high fae. The man, claiming some high fae blood in his ancestry, had just carved the whorls and swirls and runes around the door and windows, muttered a few nonsense words, and ambled on his way. This quote makes me think of three interesting things. One, obviously we know that it doesn't matter whether mortals possess magic when word marks are in play here, right? So word marks, as a refresher for everyone from Throne of Glass, are symbols that just inherently produce magic, whether you have magic or not.
Well, I just reread this part, and that's what I thought too, because they work when magic has been when there is no magic anymore.
Yeah.
But there is a line, and I don't know that there's an answer because that's definitely how I remembered it. So I feel like you are right, but there is a line where Selena says that you need to have magic in your blood in order for the word marks to work. But she says that when she's literally drawing the word marks in blood. So I don't know. Because she's also obviously able to get the word marks to work when she's like shackled in iron and when there is no magic. So I know where you're going with that, and I had that same thought and I like it. I'm just not sure it 100% works.
Yeah. Well, in
but
this
I still
case,
think
it doesn't really have to. It just would be, well, yeah, I could go back and do a study of who uses word marks and when, but I'm sure they all have some form of magic. The closest thing I can think of is the witches, but like they do. But anyways, this guy who did it claims to have some high fae blood in his ancestry. He doesn't even need to be part of the Ancient Warriors line, honestly. We know that there were crossbreeds, and we know that in the case of crossbreeds, they usually ended up with the human mother on the human side of the wall. So it is feasible that this man who carved these word marks did have high fae ancestry, and therefore the word marks could have worked. And then those marks are described as whorls and swirls and runes, which also, this is like out there, but made me wonder, are the bargain marks and tattoos that are inked on people when they make a bargain, are those word marks? I think they are.
I have a precog theory about almost exactly that. Not exactly that, but very close to that. So we'll get to it in precog.
Yeah. I think every whirl and swirl we see in this series is probably a word mark.
Yeah, if it says whirl or swirl, so it's a word mark.
Honestly, yeah.
Yeah.
So anyways, we know from, spoiler here, we know from the Throne of Glass series that there are similarly described markings to all of this called word marks. We also know that Papa Archeron has been subjected to glamour before, so he could have known what these were when he was asking for them. He also could have not. He could have been manipulated into asking for them in some way, shape, or form. So what are word marks typically used for? So notable uses of word marks, right, in Throne of Glass. Cain uses it to open a portal to another world, to summon the Ridderak and other beasts. Nehemiah uses it to close portals that Cain opens. So she basically chases him around and closes all of these portals. They're also used to open and close portals to other worlds a few times. They can be used to simply stop people from crossing into a specific area. The King of Adarlan uses it to prevent Aelin from getting into the castle and Queen of Shadows, and Aelin uses that same word mark later on Manon to trap her.
She also uses it for the creature under the library so that he doesn't get through the threshold, which is exactly the scenario we're talking about here.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Word marks are also used by Elena to seal Erewhon into his tomb. So they can also be used to seal, and they can be used to summon. So Dorian summons Gavin using a word mark. So what purpose could the word marks around the Archerons' cottage have served? They clearly didn't keep Tamlin out. So if they were word marks in the attempt of actually physically blocking Faye out of the cottage, they didn't do that. You're looking at me like you know something.
But they did, well, again, it's tricky wording, right? Because I believe it says they're supposed to protect against fairy harm. They did protect against fairy harm. Tamlin doesn't harm them, right?
Yeah.
It does work. And they're never attacked by fairies. Amaranthus cronies are out and about in the human lands, and they are never attacked by fairies. So I actually think these word marks did work.
Tamlin, when he arrives at the cottage, is a growling shape in the doorway does not break into the home.
Like a vampire, he needs an invitation.
Well, no, but Feyre does say those ridiculous wards on our threshold were as good as cobwebs against him. I should have asked the mercenary how she killed that fairy.
But his intention wasn't harm.
Yeah.
That's my point.
True.
His intention was never harm. Yeah.
Maybe they did work. Yeah. So, like, that's the easiest answer, right? Is like, they are what they said they were intended to do. But if it were trying to block Faye out, that doesn't work. They didn't keep Tamlin out. They didn't keep Cassian out. They didn't, like, nobody got blocked from entering the home. However, like you said, like, no one was ever hurt in that cottage by any form of fairy harm. What else do you have on this?
I got more into what are word marks and how much are they used in this world. Do we want to go down that road, or let's just chat about it now?
Okay.
Because there's an interesting idea here. We see Amren use word marks multiple times, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't think there's any kind of question that they're word marks. She uses swirls and whirls in the summer court when they're retrieving the Book of Breathings. The quote is, "I reached the door, sliding the box into the wide inside pocket of my leather jacket while Amren's blazing palm flattened against the door, burning, heating the metal, swirls and whirls radiating out as though if it were a language all her own." And so again, swirls and whirls, that typically means word marks. There are also whirls on the door that is guarding the Book of Breathing. And on the wall itself, right? So on the door, it says, "I wipe my hand on the only clean part of me, my neck, and use the other to scrape away the last bit of mud from the round door. Every brush against the lead sent pangs of cold through me, but there, a carved whorl in the center of the door." So there are word marks actually all around Prythian, right? And I want to talk about why there would be word marks all around Prythian when seemingly the Valg, I'm going to say seemingly, we know the Valg have maybe been there, but the Daglan certainly had a much higher presence, right? So Amren says, when Bryce comes into Prythian, Amren says that the Bryce's tattoo on her back is in the same language as the Book of Breathings, right? I think it is safe to assume, but I will say we do not have a smoking gun, that the Book of Breathings and Bryce's tattoo are written in the language of word marks, right? I think we can say that. Rigelus tells Bryce that her tattoo is written in their language, in House of Flame and Shadow, right? So he's an Asteri. So he says, "I can teach you things you've never even dreamed of," Rigelus promised. "The language inked on your back, it is our language from our home world. I can teach you how to wield it. Any world might be open to you," which is, of course, what happens with the portals in books 1 and 2 in Throne of Glass, right? You can open a portal to a world. So this fits. I think that the word marks are the language of the Asteri, are the language of the Daglan, which is why there are word marks seemingly all over Prythian, right? You mentioned in a previous episode, you think that all these maid things are talking to Feyre in Ancient Fae. I think they're talking to her in this language, in the language of the word marks, which is a real language because Nehemiah and Selena both speak it at different points, right? That's my thinking. So who is this passing charlatan and why does he know the language of the Asteri is a great question. But it also could just be that, like, he's seen it around because it's all over Prythian, because it is in all these places. But yeah, really, where did this passing charlatan, like, learn this language, I think is a huge question. And I think what you were getting at before is because we've been told humans who don't have magic, who don't have Fey ancestry can wield magic. Is that because it's word marks? Which would make sense.
Well,
right.
we are directly told that. So if not word marks, then what? Right? Like sometimes it is just the spell, like the words themselves that hold the power. Reese confirms that. What did you say? Her tattoo.
Bryce's tattoo
is written in word marks. Yeah.
Well, it is written in the language of the Book of Breathing, which we think is word marks.
Wait, but the Book of Breathings is. I thought the Book of Breathings was Leishon Hakadosh. Did I make that up?
Yeah, I think that's word marks.
So this entire magic system is based on biblical Hebrew.
Sure. I realize that is a real
Leishon Hakadosh is.
I realize that is a real language, but I'm telling you that I think the Leishon Hakadosh and the language of the Asteri and the word marks are all the same. I think they're all the same language, is my guess.
Okay.
Because if we want to summarize it, because word marks are described as whirls and swirls. That's what they're described as. And there are whirls and swirls all over Prythian. And we know that the Daglan, who were the Asteri, are who populated Prythian. So it's from them.
I guess my only question on that would be, like, if the Book of Breathings were written in the language of the word marks and whirls and swirls are word marks, like, this shouldn't be that foreign to, like, Feyre should at least recognize it, right? Like, there's
Yeah,
word
right.
marks everywhere. Like, her hands are covered in them.
Maybe, but like she doesn't even know how to read, so like
She does
no,
now.
I don't know. Yes, potentially.
Yeah.
They're not everywhere. Like they're on her door potentially, and she notices them on the gate. But yeah, it could be. I could be wrong. It could not be the same language for sure.
Okay. All right.
Precog corner. You want to go first this time?
Corner. Sure, I have like basically nothing, but it's a fun little call out since we're talking about the Archerons. So this puts everything kind of on its head, I think, but maybe you'll talk me out of it putting everything on its head. The river Acheron is the river of the underworld that people cross to go into the afterlife. Obviously, Acheron is not the same thing as Archeron. However, if Sarah J. Maas was feeling cute and put Archer in Acheron because Feyre kills a Fae with a bow and arrow, and that's how all of this sets off, then there is a river in this universe that has bodies of the deceased ferried across it, and that is the Easterus River in Lunathian. There is a sailing that describes the act of sending a body across the river. There's a death mark that you get to like go into the underworld. It's basically a point of judgment. If you had a good life, then you get in, and if you don't, then you do not. We know that this whole process was actually like very corrupt in the end, right? Because we found out that the Underking was basically just like harvesting bodies for Asteri power. But what if it was once something that was not like that? And that is where the Archerons family actually had their start, or at least like some ancestry that did that. And that's how they got the name Archeron. I don't know. Just something. Probably nothing.
Yeah, I mean, they call Nesta Queen of Death, right?
Yeah. A lot of death imagery with Nesta specifically.
Yeah, could be.
And they have like a bunch of Crescent City imagery. So I don't know. That's all.
Could be. I like that. Because like obviously she chose that name for a reason, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, what's yours?
Okay, mine. So we kind of previewed it, right? But yeah, so the Illyrian tattoos are constantly described as whirls and swirls, right?
Mm-hmm.
In Queen of Shadows, Aelin paints Chaol with word marks to protect him from the Val King when he's going to face off the Val King. That's how he ends up injured but not dead. We are told in Crescent City 3 that the Illyrians were made by the Asteri to be their foot soldiers, but then that they were part of the rebellion who overthrew them, right? I am wondering if Illyrian tattoos, which are like a cultural thing at this point, right? What if the origin of the Illyrian tattoos was that they were word marks to protect the Illyrians from the Asteri, but they became like the language was lost, the origination of the tradition was lost, but that is where it started, and it kept going because they overthrew the Asteri as kind of like a way to celebrate this overthrowing of the Asteri and the protection that the tattoos give them, because in theory, they're word marks and they do give them protection.
Yeah. So you're saying that they were created when the Illyrians stopped serving the Asteri or wanted to stop serving the Asteri?
Yeah, I'm saying they were used as a defensive tool in this war against the Asteri.
Yeah.
And then that is where this tradition of the Illyrian tattoos came from. And that's why only Illyrians kind of have them, because they were like the foot soldiers in that war.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, I think that the fact that tattoos always mean something, in Prythian specifically, they have to do something.
It has to be like, what's the word? What am I trying to say here? Like, they don't recognize Bryce's tattoo, right? Like, they don't know. They recognize Bryce's tattoo as being written in a different language, and the Illyrians don't recognize their own tattoos as being written in another language. So, like, maybe they're not word marks anymore. Maybe they started as word marks, but then it's become these more like creative designs, essentially. Yeah. But, like, was that the origin of it? Was that it was word
like
marks,
why
but
they
it's
have
not
tattoos
anymore.
to begin with.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like it.
Could be. Cool.
Could be.
All right. What are you reading?
As previously discussed, I just finished I Am Pilgrim. I'm currently rereading the parts of House of Flame and Shadow that have to do with this series. I think I'm probably going to just restart Crescent City at this point. I did watch all of Wednesday.
Oh, nice. How was it?
It was great.
We just got Netflix back. We didn't have it for a while. But
I mean, I love Tim Burton. Genius man. I can't say enough good things about him, even though He's a little macabre. He is. He's a little weirdo.
Certainly.
He's a little weirdo.
He is a little weirdo. Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm excited to, well, I guess I'm actually sad because now I don't have Wednesday to watch, but I feel like I've got so much TV to catch up on. So I'll pick up something soon. What about you? What are you reading?
I'm still reading Throne of Glass. Can I confess something, like a deep, dark secret on this podcast, maybe? I really liked Kale and Selena. I thought they were really good together. And then, of course, it all goes to shit. I get that. And I remember the first time reading, I hated Kale and I hated that he sent her to Wendling with like out talking to her. But for that 1 week they're together in Crown of Midnight.
That 1 week.
I liked it. I liked them. I thought it worked. I understood. I don't know. I think I also, you know this, like I liked Tower of Dawn. I think Kale is a good character.
Oh, Tower of Dawn was a great book.
Yeah. Like I have a lot of sympathy for Kale. I think he makes some bad decisions, but like I don't think he does anything with like ill intent. And I know a lot of people compare him to Tamlin, and I'm just like, no, I don't.
Oh, definitely not that bad.
I don't think they're the same at all.
He's honestly, I think this is like not great, but I just think he's like kind of childish in some ways, like naive. Like that was why I didn't like him. But I think they were like the healthiest, most normal relationship of all of the relationships that transpired, including Aelin and Rowan. Like, first of all, aren't they related distantly?
Okay, so like we need to get into this in Throne of Glass because Aelin and Dorian are certainly related, and she certainly knew that when she started hooking up with him.
Well, they only kissed, but yeah.
Yeah, they only kissed and spent some nights together, but apparently they only kissed.
Yeah.
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 But she knew. She knew she was kissing her cousin, basically.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, like what's worse, being related or starting off your relationship with a punch in the face? I don't know. Like the only true enemies to lovers that Sarah J. Maas has ever written was Rowan and Aelin.
About to reread all of it, so I'm sure I'll have different opinions soon. But like Aelin and Rowan is the worst romance in my mind. Like in terms of romance, like for the Sarah J. Maas series, like they never really did anything for me, if I'm being honest. I know people are all like, oh my God, but where is my wife? And I get it, but like, I don't know. Yeah. And I am about to reread it. And I was pretty hung up on her working things out with Kale. So maybe I'll have a different opinion on it now.
I think I liked Rowan a lot, but I agree with you that the development of their relationship was complicated.
It frustrated me so much. Like there's all this tension and then he just like smells that she's aroused and then it's like, okay, we're together now. I'm like, what? That's it? Like that's just what's happening here? Like you smell her neck and like you're mated? Like it was so weird.
Yeah.
All right. We are on social media. We are Dragons in the Details Pod on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. You can email us at dragonsindethedetailspod@gmail.com. And we are on Discord. Our server is, you guessed it, Dragons in the Details. I guess no pod that time, but it's Dragons in the Details. I think that's it. Talk to you all next week. Love you. Bye.
See you next week. Love you. Bye.